Hello and welcome back to Vox Terra. Today, I want just from our background knowledge, maybe what you've heard in the news or had in the background on the radio, about that submersible that recently went deep sea to look at the remains of the Titanic. It imploded and the passengers on board died. And what we basically know about that, if we're just casually listening, is that the tickets cost something like $250,000 a piece. There was some very wealthy individuals on board, and there was tragically a wealthy man with his teenage son, and they all perished. We also know there was a lot of media attention on it, and we also know that there was a lot of search and rescue efforts being made, and here presumably at the taxpayer dollar. Now, this gets us into a few points. The first one, I didn't think of myself, but I heard on Democracy Now!, where Amy Goodman, the host, she contrasted the media attention the submersible got with the lack of media attention, the lack of humanizations of all of those migrants dying in the Mediterranean or the Atlantic, and how many of their boats are sinking as they try to make it to Europe. Or she didn't mention this one, but even all of those people crossing the Mexican border into the United States who perish in the desert. And why the lack of media attention. But we could also add why the lack of search and rescue. And you may have also heard there are now some so-called conspiracy theories floating around about that submersible. Well, first, I want to take that as a moment to address these so-called conspiracy theories. And I call them so-called because you want to watch. If a conspiracy theory is not aimed at what's really the actual conspiracy, which is that our society is dominated by wealthy business interests and wealthy individuals, and that we're all trapped in a system of buy, sell, buy, need it or don't, and we're all kind of forced to make money, even if making money is poisoning our planet, destroying our biosphere. That's the real conspiracy right under our noses. So if these other conspiracies lead you away from that conclusion and focus you on something that's maybe going to lead you towards generally voting for those who are actually defending capitalism as opposed to those criticizing it, and I call it a false conspiracy theory. And so to wit, I think Amy Goodman mentioned on her show that part of the problem with this particular company that ran this submersible business was they were not regulated, or they didn't opt into some type of government oversight. So here's a poorly regulated business. Now, regarding this one-sided media attention or lopsided media attention and lopsided sympathy, well, the narrative on migrants is that, a lot of people really think they don't want them coming in, and they're maybe fine seeing them perish, die, because they want to discourage them. If there was lots of money being spent to rescue them, then wouldn't they keep coming? Well, let's look at the money spent first of all. That says another thing. The money was spent to try to save that submersible, this for-profit business interest. Our society is completely subsidized. There's not truly any free market. That should be something everybody should understand. At some level, every industry is subsidized. It's just we're subsidizing the dominant industries rather than subsidizing those that might help the long-term survival of our species. Well, back to that migrant issue, part of the reason why people are so unsympathetic, and I'm not saying that they would necessarily want more migration, but I believe they would sympathize more, is if they saw how this system where we're dominated by these industries is really skewing or creating conflict and destabilizing the climate, and that's the cause for some of this migration crisis. But the media tends to underreport the connections between the excessive burning of fossil fuels that sent the heating of our planet in motion and has destabilized the climate. They underemphasize that because that steps on the toes of those large fossil fuel companies. And then they underemphasize our, in quotes, role, or the role of those who dominate our foreign policy. And by ours, I really mean so-called Western countries like the US of A, in destabilizing the politics of much of the other rest of the world. The invasion of Iraq, or the supporting of the overthrow of Gaddafi in Libya with the NATO air cover, and all of these nations that we really have actively helped throw into chaos. That's de-emphasized. And the narrative is that we're just going there to try to help them rather than we're going there destabilizing them, maybe to protect certain vested business interests. So if the media had more of that environmental critique and more of that what I call an actual left-wing critique, where you're looking at the influence of these established industries like the defense industry in our government and in our media, then I think people would be more sympathetic to the fact the whole world is now on the move as everything is heating up and we seem to be entering an era of heightened conflict. Another aspect for the sympathy, and this isn't the entire thing, is that maybe our society has to a degree a worship of the rich or a worship of the wealthy. You might see it in yourself or from those you know on an interpersonal basis. If someone knows somebody very wealthy, there's always this fantasy maybe they're going to hire you or marry you or that type of or somehow give you an opportunity, so you want to be nice to them. Whereas somebody poor, you're going to dismiss them, maybe not pay attention to them, not listen to what they have to say. Well, my friend, that's kind of what helped get Donald Trump elected. People said, well, he's rich, he must know something. Well, my position is that if somebody's wealthy, it means they knew how to get wealthy. They picked some type of a path, or were born into a path that led to a lot of money making, but it doesn't mean they're actually better than other people or they're more knowledgeable. It definitely does not mean they're more knowledgeable and therefore more ready to lead our world. If anything, it can mean they're actually less knowledgeable because they were very myopic on focusing on how they got wealthy, be it being a very focused, determined plastic surgeon, a very focused, determined CEO of a defense industry, a very focused, determined fill in the blank. Now, it might not all be worship of the rich, because we did have a lot of media attention given to those kids who were playing soccer back in Thailand, caught in that flood in a cave, as well as those miners in Latin America who were trapped as well. I remember there was a lot of media attention for that story as well. But I still can't help but think that people's sort of idolization of the wealthy plays a role in this. So let's just take away here. Our whole economy is subsidized. We see how we subsidized that rescue operation, but we're not subsidizing other aspects of our economy. That was the subsidy of a private for-profit tour trip here. We see how we have lopsided media coverage when it comes to certain people and not other people. And we hopefully see how a more reckless, poorly regulated economic structure really is perilous for people both individually and for our planet as a whole. Well, hey, I hope you found this interesting. So please make sure you're subscribed, you're clicking that notification button, you're liking, you're commenting, and thanks to my 2 patrons of Patreon, Paolo Grissi, Environmental Coffee House. And as always, hey, peace be with you.